Hello, Bert. Gee, it's great to see you.
Hello, Stan. Hello, Al. What are you doing here?
Mother wrote us and told us that you two were dead. Well, we just arrived this morning on the Periwinkle.
That explains everything. They've been mistaken for us, and we've been mistaken for them.
Why, say. Let's go home and explain it to the wife.
You're sure looking good, Stanley. But how you have altered. You've altered too, but you haven't changed a bit. Has he, Ollie? He's just the storm, baby.
That Laurel is the dumbest thing I ever saw. The other one is, too. You're absolutely right, Bert. Neither one of them can see any further than the end of their nose.
John McCABE, founder of Sons of the Desert.
So I said that certainly would be a hallmark of the group, and it has been ever since. So the group has now been flourishing. It's now not only American, but we have tents, as we call them, the various groups in Canada, in Britain, and even one in Australia.
How old were you, John, when you first discovered Laurel and Hardy?
I discovered Laurel and Hardy when I was a child. I went to their films. This was in the 30s. And then I was in England working on my PhD at the Shakespeare Institute at Stratford-on-Avon in 1954. And I happened to be going down the street in Birmingham nearby, that is nearby Stratford, and I saw a sign saying Laurel and Hardy in Birds of a Feather. I thought I knew the names of all their films, but that was new to me. I went over to the house, the film house, but it wasn't a film house. It was a music hall, the Hippodrome, and Laurel and Hardy were there in person. They were doing a little sketch which Stan had written, and I went backstage after, and I introduced myself as an American student far from home, and so on, and met Mr. and Mrs. Hardy, and they were very gracious. And then I went over to Stan's dressing room, talked with him, and his wife happened to be away visiting relatives in Paris, and I sensed that he was a little lonely, so I stayed on, and I asked him many questions. Now, I had begun life as an actor, and I had appeared in any number of comedies, so my questions centered more or less on how the gags that he had created were crafted. This was just the sort of thing that he loved to talk about. So we talked for 2 hours. I apologized for the length of time. He said, no, come back. So I came back the next day and so on. And out of that came my first book about Laurel and Hardy, Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy. And I've written 2 books on them since.
Of course, that experience you had there in England is mentioned in Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy. And the thing that comes out of your book, naturally, is the great love that you have for their work, and also particularly for Stan Laurel himself as a man. As I remember correctly, you didn't really get to know Oliver Hardy, did you?
No, I didn't get to know Babe anywhere near as well. I didn't meet him, but he was more socially inclined than Stan. When the end of the working day came, about 3 o'clock, Babe Hardy went out to his lakeside country club and loved it very much. He loved to play cards, he loved to play golf, he loved to dance. Whereas Stan, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, would immediately begin another full 8 hours of work. He would start to work on the gags in the forthcoming films or whatever they were currently doing, seeing the daily shots and so on. So I really had no chance to get to know Babe that well, but I do know indeed very well now his charming widow, Lucille Hardy, who is married to a chap named Ben Price, and they live in California, and they're very much a part of the activities of the Sons of the Desert.
The beautiful thing in your book that I really enjoyed was your description of Laurel and Hardy going to Great Britain. They didn't realize exactly what was waiting for them, did they?
No, they had no idea that they were as popular as they were. And so when the fans turned out in such extraordinary numbers, they were almost a little frightened. But they soon realized that there was a great deal of love there, and that cheered them for the rest of their days.
Laurel and Hardy obviously were very close friends off the set. Even though they didn't see each other, they were friends, weren't they?
Oh, yes, indeed. They were close friends. They didn't know each other, as you said, very well socially. And they were such a perfect partnership because Babe Hardy, although certainly willing to contribute to the gags and the like in terms of thinking them out, at the same time was more inclined to let Stan do it. And Stan was very happy to do it. Stan had a strongly comic, creative mind, and consequently they worked professionally in excellent shape. They were marvelously helpful to each other. Then when the time came at the end of their careers, when they went back to music hall, they did get to know each other really quite well. They traveled many thousands of miles together with their wives, and they found to their great surprise that they did like each other indeed very much. By surprise, I mean to say that they, in a sense, did not really know each other well, but they found in these later years that they really did know each other well, and they deeply appreciated each other.
Stan Laurel particularly must have been a man with very few pretensions. A friend of mine, a man called Dave Gray, he's billed as Ugly Dave Gray, is one of our leading comedians here in Australia, and some years ago he found himself in Los Angeles alone. He was in his hotel room, and just for the hell of it, he went through a telephone book and found Stan Laurel's name listed in this phone book, and he rang him. Had never met him before, had always been a very huge fan of Stan Laurel's, and Stan Laurel invited him out, sight unseen, to have tea with him in the afternoon, and he spent two of the most wonderful hours of his life.
That's very typical of Stan. Yes, he was perfectly meetable, and everyone who really wanted to meet him could meet him. Sometimes toward the end, when he had certain problems with his health, he couldn't do that. But he answered every bit of mail he ever got, with the exception of the one time when he was in the hospital with a diabetic episode, and the mail was just overwhelming. There were 60,000, 70,000 pieces of mail. But every other thing, every other letter or card, he always answered. And one of the things that I found after Stan died, a lot of the mail would come in to Mrs. Laurel, and she asked me to answer it. And I noticed that in every letter, and now these are now thousands of letters, each writer said Stan was my close friend. And of course, they were all absolutely right. He was everyone's close friend.
Was Oliver Hardy as approachable as Stan Laurel?
Oh, yes. Babe Hardy was very friendly. And if you were out at his club, the Lakeside, and you wanted to play golf with him, usually you just introduce yourself and say, Mr. Hardy, I'm a great admirer of yours, and I wonder might I be in your next foursome if that's possible? And he'd work you in somehow. Oh, yes, he was very, very friendly and affable.
Who were the contemporaries of the team that made them smile? Who were their favorite comedians?
Well, they had certain favorites, of course. One they admired the most is the one I think most of us admire greatly, too, and that's Charlie Chaplin, for his sheer professionalism and his virtuosity in making films. They also liked Buster Keaton very much. They had a special fondness for Harry Langdon because Harry worked for Laurel and Hardy in several films as a gag man, and they thought Harold Lloyd was very competent indeed. Stan didn't much care for comedians that had anything of his current, longer than current, I guess, business of the insult, the calculated insult comedy. He was aware that it was popular, and he understood the reason for it, and the like, but it always made him uncomfortable. And there were a few comedians that he actively disliked. I'll only mention one, Buddy Hackett. He couldn't endure that kind of rather rude and crude approach to comedy. For Stan, comedy was something that had to be fairly dignified, even if it was, of course, reversing dignity. And above all, it had to be kind. So those were and for instance, he very much appreciated the Marx Brothers, but that kind of comedy was just not his kind of comedy, and he just found it himself really unable to enjoy it as much as the average person, because Stan was so deeply gentle and such a, in the best sense of the word, sweet person that any comedy that didn't smack of, well, of basically his approach to comedy, he was just not awfully comfortable with.
America has provided many great comedy teams over the years, the Marx Brothers, Abbott and Costello, Martin and Lewis. But the interesting thing about Laurel and Hardy is they were making films long before any of the teams that I've mentioned. And certainly when you see one of their films today, circumstances and lifestyles have changed quite dramatically. And perhaps the sets are dated and the film technique is no longer used today. But when you get to their comedy, there is something quite ageless about it. Young people of today, people who were born certainly after both Laurel and Hardy passed away, still laugh at Stan and Babe, as you call him. Can you describe, John, the special magic they've got? What was their secret?
Well, I think for myself, and I think I'm a fairly average fellow, I think for myself, I see in them the beauty of childhood, the beauty of innocence. We're always deeply attracted to pure and honest innocence, I think. And in addition to that, you have the idea that here we are, we're in a troublesome world always. Life always has its problems. And we have our everyday problems. We stub our toe, or we are opening up the kitchen cabinet and to reach for a little cellar of salt, and it falls down on us. Whereas with Laurel and Hardy, they open up the kitchen cabinet and a 24 bag of flour falls down on top of them. Those are really our troubles writ large. So I think it's a combination of those two things. That gentle, soft innocence combined with the problems of everyday life that are magnified for us so beautifully by them. I think that's the essential reason for their appeal.
Just finally, how do you celebrate Cuckoo Dancing Day?
Well, we do it principally by showing the films, which is the best way, we think, to celebrate Laurel and Hardy, to see their films and to see them again and just enjoy, which is just the way Stan would have wanted it.
Do you think they realized just how good they were?
Yes, in a very dignified and very honorable kind of way, they did. They knew that people liked them, and they were very pleased and inexpressibly warmed by that pleasure. And I think in so many ways they realized more and more, the older they got, that they were a part of humanity, and speaking without being pretentious at all, speaking for the troubles of mankind in just the way that they did.
John, it's been a pleasure speaking to you this morning. This has been another fine mess that you didn't get me into.
Well, thank you so much, Bert. I enjoyed talking to you very much.
We spoke then to John McCABE, founder of Sons of the Desert, which is the world's leading fan club for Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. I've just worked it out. It's almost 15 years since the death of Stan Laurel. He died on the 23rd of February, 1965, at the age of 75. Oliver Hardy died back in 1957 at the age of 65. Now, there is quite a bit of recorded material now available on Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, but a lot of it, unless you're complete Laurel and Hardy freaks, doesn't mean all that much, because, of course, their comedy was particularly visual. They were not necessarily comedians who depended upon the written or the spoken word, although, of course, they made a number of talking films. They had their real success in talkies. Prior to the talking films that they made, they were in silence, both individually and then as a team. But the best I can come up with is from a film that was made in 1931 called The New Recruits, directed by James W. Horn.